Today's date is January 20th, 2023. My name is Kelly Zakovic, representing the City of Savannah Municipal Archives, and I'm interviewing Ethel Hannon for the Savannah Community Memory Project. We're conducting this interview at the Crusader Club. Thank you for joining us today.
Yes.
Okay, so let's just start with telling us your full name.
Ethel Hannon,
Alrighty. And what neighborhood are you here to share with us today?
White Bluff.
And what would you consider the boundaries of the White Bluff neighborhood?
Okay, so when I grew up, the area, I guess in this area, which is between, I would say, Rose Dew. There's a street down there called Rose Dew. And I'd say as far as Nicholson Borough, where Nicholson Borough Baptist Church is, that area. That was probably considered White Bluff, okay? And when I grew up, we used to call this, the main road, we used to call it the Shell Road. So that was our in and out road to get in and out of White Bluff. And it was, at one time was a dirt road, but I guess they used oyster shells maybe, and made what they call a shell road. So that's what we drove on for a long time, and I do remember that. Yeah.
So when were you born?
I was born in 1957.
And where were you born?
Right up the street from this center, which is probably maybe 8 houses on the left. And it was a little wooden house, which is still there. And now I live right behind that little wooden house because we had an acre of land, and which I didn't know at the time. But as I got older, got married, had kids, and did some work on, with the land, found out that we had an acre. So I, at the time, my parents had passed away, and so it became heirs property. So it was all my siblings, and so I asked them if I could have the other half of the land. So we divided it, and they gave me the back half of it. So that's where I'm at now. We built the house there.
Do you know how long that land was in your family?
How long it's been in the family?
Mm-hmm.
Probably, I know it was there before I was born, so that's over 60 years, probably 70 years, maybe 75 years, I would say.
That's cool.
Yeah.
What were your parents' names?
My father was Charlie Brown, and my mother was Irene Brown.
Alrighty. Where did you grow up? You kind of just told us, but
Yeah, right in this area, White Bluff area here. The Crusade Club that's here now used to be a sort of like a house, and on the back of this property, it was a wooden house, and that's where we would go to. They had all kind of activities and stuff for the kids, and that's where we would go. They had like a playground with much older equipment when I grew up, but they had like a merry-go-round, a swing set, and that's probably it that I can remember, and a slide. Yeah, so.
What other kind of activities did they have?
They had, and I know you've heard talk of Miss Johnson. They call her Bootsy. She was the director for the center. And she would have things like crocheting. We would make pot holders. We would play games. they had just activities for the kids to sort of keep us out of trouble. Yeah.
I don't think anybody's talked about Bootsy on camera yet. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about her?
Okay, well, she was, I guess, the director of the center, and she had a heart for the younger kids, and she just, made sure that we had, activities, things to do. She was just a community leader, I would say. She was involved in just about everything in the community, had to do with the community, the church, whatever. Yeah.
So where did you go to school?
I went to Haven Elementary. I went to Windsor Forest Elementary. I went to Bartlett Middle School, and I went to Windsor Forest High School.
Is that where most of the kids went to school?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we were bused from here to what you call Tadenville,
Mm-hmm.
to Haven Elementary. That's where I went to first part of elementary school, and then they segregated, or that's when we integrated. And well, we actually, I think it was like maybe the 5th grade that I went to Windsor Elementary.
And that was the integrated school?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we stayed there a couple of years, and then that's when I went to Bartlett Junior High, and then Windsor Forest High School.
Okay.
Yeah.
So where do you live now?
Right up the street, a couple of houses down on the left, which is on my parents' old property. Like I say, we cut it in half and we took the back half, and my brother still lives on the front half.
Have you lived out here your whole life? Did you ever move away?
Well, I lived here until 75. I moved to New York for about 4 years, almost 4 years, and then I moved back home after my father passed.
And how long has your family been out here in White Bluff?
About 70 years,
Okay.
75 years, something like that. Yeah.
Okay. So
They migrated from, they came over from St. Catherine's Island and Ossabaw Island.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so in the early 20th century they came over?
Yes.
Very cool.
Mm-hmm.
And how long were they out there on St. Catherine's and Ossabaw?
I would say they probably came over in their, I don't know, maybe 20s. I really don't know. Yeah, I would say their 20s.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you have further generations back that were out on the islands, or?
Their parents, in which I didn't know them, their parents was on the island, because I've got all the records of who all lived in my father's house and who all lived in my mother's house. I've got all those records, but it was back on the island. Yeah.
That's super interesting. So we've talked about one, but are there any other important leaders or figures in the community?
My father was a very religious man, and what I can remember of that is he wanted to do everything right. He wanted to do the right thing, and he took care of a lot of people in the community. He would I remember him going to Durst Bakery, and they would give him I guess they call it day-old bread or whatever, and cakes and stuff like that. So he would pile them in his trunk, and he'd come out and he'd hand them all out in the neighborhood. I can remember that. And he was a fisherman, so he would supply the neighborhood with seafood and all that. And then my parents actually sold seafood, so that's how we sort of made our living. You know, he sold seafood. Yeah.
Anybody else out here we should know about?
There was my neighbor, Mr. Herbert Batiste and Bernice Batiste. They were very prominent in the neighborhood as far as, I think he was probably part of getting the Crusaders community started. And, you know, he made sure that it functioned properly. And as a matter of fact, they've got a, not a plaque, but what do you call it? Like a little monument or whatever down at Coffee Bluff River, where he used to go and fish and all that. So they got his name on it and everything. So yeah, they did a lot for our community. Yeah. And she actually was the historian out here. She was a church historian and community historian, which she got a lot of stuff together that you all are probably reading now. She did that, and then her daughter came behind her, Sandra Batiste, and she finished, you know, as far as she could, and she passed away a couple of years ago. Mm-hmm. But yeah, they were very prominent as far as history is concerned.
Anybody else? You got everybody.
Well, we were a really, really close-knit community at that time. So everybody played an important role, really. They did, especially as far as looking out for each other, looking out for kids and all that. You know, everybody played an important role in that aspect. I'm trying to think. There were, you know, much older people that, you know, contributed a lot to the community. The Max, the Harris, the Batiste, you know, they were pretty big name in the community as far as, you know, outreach, you know, to the community.
So you mentioned that your father worked with seafood. What else did people do for work?
Most of the older people, I think, their income was like welfare, because they were coming out of, I wouldn't say slavery, but they didn't have the resources, the education, to really go out and do a lot of things. There were a lot of the elderly that were, what do you call them? They would drive cars for people. There was a lot of the elderly ladies that would do housework and provide an income for their family and things like that. So there wasn't a whole lot of older people with education. And there were some, you know, that actually had an education and, you know, did some great things in the community. But for the most part, you had fishermen and farmers and, you know, people like that provided for their family that way.
Would the fishermen and farmers, where would they sell their stuff?
My parents sold their goods downtown. Actually, they would go downtown on Broad Street, and they would actually, I can remember my mom actually, and you've probably seen them in some of the books or movies, where they would wrap a towel or a cloth around their head, and they'd set a basket up there, and that's where she would sell her crab and shrimps. And they would walk up and down the street saying crab for sale, crab, shrimps, and oyster for sale. And I can remember. Now I do remember that part, but my older sister said, "Oh, that was so embarrassing." She said, "Oh, I would get so embarrassed," which I guess I was too young to get embarrassed or whatever. But
Did you have a basket?
no,
Or no?
no, just my mom.
Nice. And was that pretty typical for how people would sell?
Yeah.
Cool.
That's how they sold. Now I don't know about anybody else or how what they did. I was really young then, but that's what they did. Yeah.
So what are some of the specific churches out here that people would go to?
There's First Mount Pleasant, Second Mount Pleasant, Nicholson Borough Baptist Church, and there was Mount Hermon, and then there was Zion White Bluff, I believe, but it was further up, sort of out of the White Bluff community. But a lot of the White Bluff community, their families, attended there, so they were sort of part of the community churches or whatever. But yeah, there was 4 churches out here in this little small community, which it didn't have to be, but that's the way it was. You get family splits and this and that, and this family starting another church, and so that's how it was. But it still was a close-knit community in which the churches, they would support one another.
They work together.
Yeah.
Pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
Very nice. And what kind of a role did they play in the community? Any or just?
To be honest, I can remember when I was much younger. I can remember the pastor actually preaching the Word of God and trying to live the Word of God. And as I got older, they got away from that, and it was just a social club, really. And I know a lot of people that will listen to this probably will say, "Oh, why would you say that?" It's the truth. It was just a social club. They said one thing and did something totally different. So, yeah.
What church did you attend?
Second Mount Pleasant. Yeah.
Okay. So you've talked a little bit about the Crusader Club. Do you want to speak any more about its impact or anything else about it?
The Crusaders Club, I really believe that it had a great big impact on the community as far as having something for the kids to do, and because everybody would meet on the park, and we had a basketball court. The guys would meet up there and play basketball. Otherwise we'd be just roaming the streets, getting into who know what and where. So the community center had a great impact on us, growing up, and even now, for the last, I would say 4 years, maybe 6 years, because we have it every other year. We have a community reunion, and we have it here, and so everybody from out of town, who have left White Bluff, they would come back, and we enjoy that day together. So it's really neat. We have like history and artifacts and all kinds of stuff. So it's really neat, and it has really impacted the community in a great way. As far as the kids growing up and not getting into a lot of trouble and all that. So and then they'd have their whenever we have some type of meeting or some kind of activity, we have a place to have it, at the community center. So.
And where was it located here? Where was
Mm-hmm.
it?
It was on this property, but it just sat further back. It sat closer to the woods.
Okay.
But it was on this property.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Were there any other big kind of events out out here now or in the past? Any reunions or, celebrations?
They have family reunions in which, the family members have reunions in which, that still goes on today. So, our family never really had a reunion, but there are families like the Wiley family, I'm not sure about the Baptiste family, but I know they, there's families that get together and, have their reunions still, which is good. 'Cause, kids growing up today don't really know a lot of their families, and that's an opportunity for them to get to know their family and who their family are. So,
yeah, for sure. Were there any businesses in the neighborhood?
There was, we had two, I guess you call it a nightclub, but during the day it was, they were just like, convenience stores, I guess. And it was one right up here, it was called the Brown Derby. And, it was, during the day they sold like pickles and candy and sodas and honey buns and all kinds of stuff, that you can buy. The kids like to buy. And then there was another nightclub on the street over, and during the day it was just like a convenience store, so to speak. And they had a piccolo in there. We call it piccolo at the time, and you put coins in it, and play whatever music's on there.
Like a jukebox?
Yeah, we call it a piccolo.
That's cool. Never heard that.
At that time, but yeah, jukebox. And people would go and dance, and it was really fun growing up here. It really was.
What was the second one called?
It was, oh my goodness. We used to call it Nig and Dolly store. Nig, N-I-G, I don't know what that stood for, and Dolly, D-O-L-Y, I guess, store. I can't remember if it had a name. It probably did, but I don't remember what it was. Yeah.
And how long were those popular?
For years. I don't remember the timeline. I am so sorry. I am so sorry.
That's okay.
I don't remember the name of it. It's strange, but I don't.
Did they stay popular through like the 80s, 90s, 70s?
Yes. Let's see. When I would say probably the 60s, 70s. I know 70s because that was during my era.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, 80s. And it probably sort of started fading in the 80s, maybe. I don't really remember exactly when, but somewhere around that time. But from the 60s to the 80s, that was what we had. Yeah. And I mean, they would be at night, it would be crowded. They would be crowded. It'd be people come from in the downtown area, from all over Savannah, really, and come out here and that would be what you call juking.
Nice. Any other important businesses?
Let's see, what else do we have out here? I think that's probably the only business. Now, there was another store, we used to call it the corner store, in which they sold, and it was up the street a ways, about maybe a fourth of a mile down on the main road going toward Coffee Bluff. We call it the corner store, in which they sold meat and eggs and milk and stuff like that. Let's see, any other businesses? I don't think we actually had any other business out here. Oh, there was another store right here at the end of the street, going back towards the main street. They had that was like a convenience store, I guess. And I can remember that. It was just an old store. I remember that. And they sold, I guess, candy and sodas. I don't really remember that too much, but I do remember that store. And I don't know if they sold alcohol there. They probably did, probably moonshine. But I don't remember exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other like landmarks or places that were important to you?
Okay, so when you say landmark, there we have 5, I believe it is. 5 landmarks that is duly noted. I mean, we actually came out and did I think it was Tony Thomas, and the city of Savannah came out and put out landmarks, and we had like a celebration, of all the landmarks and all, and it's actually recorded down in the city as I guess a tourist attraction or whatever. But what they are they call them passageways, I guess, to the river, in which that's where the slaves used to come in, or people that would come from the different islands, like from Ossabaw Island and St. Catherine's Island and all that. They would use those passageways to get into, White Bluff or whatever, or the surrounding areas. A lot of them worked here. They had a rice factory here, or a rice field, whatever you call it. And they would go back and forth, and they would use these entryways. So what they did, and the Baptiste, actually, I don't know if Bernice Baptiste started it, and then Sandy finished it, or if Sandy started it, but they got, the landmarks, and they got them down, in the town, so that nobody will take that right of way, that passageway, and use it for their land, in which people were starting to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But those were passageways that they were used, back in the day, to go back and forth from these different islands. So they landmarked them all, which is really neat.
It's important, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Are most people out here descended from St. Catherine's and Ossabaw?
For the most part, yes. Mm-hmm.
Anywhere else that people are descended from?
Let's see, there was another island, St. Catherine, Ossabaw, what's the other one? The Barrier Islands, I don't remember the names of them, but the Barrier Islands, that's in that area, that I know of.
What are some names of the surrounding neighborhoods outside of White Bluff, but nearby?
Coffee Bluff, which is past where I said Rosedew.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we called Coffee Bluff, but it seemed as though somebody took they thought to take start Coffee Bluff further up this way and up near Nicholsonboro, and that is not Coffee Bluff. Coffee Bluff does not start there. It has always started, this has always been White Bluff, and somehow or another they combined it, and over the years, and nobody really said anything at the time, so so we know that this is White Bluff.
So it's very distinct, like Coffee Bluff people and White Bluff people were
Yeah.
distinct
Yeah.
communities.
Yep, this was White Bluff community,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Are there any others that maybe have not as prominent, or we, don't know about as much? Any other neighborhoods that are a little
You mean that's in this
in this
area?
area?
There is not really. It's just Coffee Bluff, White Bluff, and then you got Windsor Forest, and all like that. But then there are some people from Montgomery, which is in the Pinpoint area, Sandfly area, that are from the islands as well, the same islands. So, we were all close as a community, although they're way over there, Skidaway side, but Montgomery and Sandfly, Pinpoint, they're all somehow or another we're related in some way or another because we're from the same island, so yeah.
How has White Bluff changed over time?
It has really, really changed. When I was growing up, there was only, there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Maybe 9 houses, or 10 maybe, on this whole street. And they were spread out, spread apart. But now they have neighborhoods and, they build houses right next to each other and all that. But, for the most part, everybody that lived out here had land. And they had either an acre or more, of land. But it's not like that anymore. They've either sold it or, whatever, build on it or whatever. But it's changed a lot. I mean, there's people out here that we see them walking and be like, no way. Because at one time when you saw somebody walking or you saw somebody's car, you knew exactly who it was. Mm-hmm. You could be in your house and you hear a car go by and you go, oh, that's Mr. Aby. That's Mr. Aby's truck, or that's so-and-so's car, but now, it's so different. I mean, so many different people out here, which it's all good, because they gotta live too. But when you've grown up in a neighborhood like that, you think that that's your neighborhood. Nobody else is to come in and intrude on your neighborhood, but it's all good. It's been good.
Is it still kind of tight knit within the sort of original families? Like, is the next generation as tight knit as you guys are?
No. I don't even think I wouldn't know. Like my generation time, I would not know the next generation because they've spread out, they've moved. And to know the next generation, I don't know who they are. I'll see them at the reunion and I'll be like, well, whose kid is that? They go, oh, that's so-and-so's kid. And I'm like, oh my goodness. Remember when they were such, and they used to say that to us, I remember when she was so little. But yeah.
Very nice. 50 years from now, what do you want us to know about this area today? With kind of
actually, that we at one time were a very, very close-knit community. We looked out for each other. We loved each other. We just took care of each other out here and didn't want anything to happen to anybody. If something happened to one person, everybody in the neighborhood was there. If somebody go in the hospital, everybody in the neighborhood go see them, but that's not the way it is today at all. But, it was a loving neighborhood, very loving, you sort of miss that, you miss that connection and that, you know, that sense of care. You know, people had a sense of care. I mean, legitimately cared, you know, but it's still good. I still love it out here. I wouldn't go anywhere else. My husband always threatened. He says, all right, we're gonna move to Kansas City. That's where he's from. And I'm like, you wouldn't dare. Oh, and he loves it now too. Yeah.
No, that's good.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite memory? We'll go out with that.
White Bluff?
Yeah.
Let's see. My favorite memory is my peers. We all got along, you know, and we would have so much fun together out here. You know, and I just remember, I remember going to school, and we would walk up to the church. That's where we caught the bus, and we would walk up there. And I can remember it used to get so cold here that, and these were dirt roads, and it would get so cold that the ground would freeze. And when you walk on it, it would crack. I mean, it would get so cold. And if there was any puddles, it would be frozen over. And I mean, that was all the time in the winter. And we just had so much fun together, you know, as a community and as kids. Just remember roaming through the woods, and there were paths that we'd ride our bikes through, and to get over to the next street, you know, we have like a little path you can take your bike and ride through, and it was just fun growing up. I mean, we would literally play in the streets, and we would, you know, we played things like half rubber, you know, where you take a tennis ball and cut it in half, or a rubber ball and cut it in half, and that would be your ball. And, you know, you'd have a stick, a literal stick, you know, and that was our game, you know, half rubber.
I never heard about that till I moved here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And then we'd play hopscotch. That was very famous. And then we used to have this game where it's called Jackstones. I don't know if you heard of that. It's little metal jacks. They look like little stars or something. Mm-hmm. And it's 10 of them. And you have a little round ball, and you know, you throw the jacks out, and then you pick them up. The first time you do all of them, pick them up ones. And then the next time you do twos, you pick them up. You throw the ball, pick the jack up, let the ball bounce once, and then catch it. Mm-hmm. And if you touch the jacks, then you're out. You know, it's somebody else's turn. And that was our game, and we loved those games, you know. So yeah, it was fun. It was fun growing up. There's lots of memories. Some I, you know, would like to tell, and some I wouldn't. But it was all fun. It really was. Yeah.
That sounds pretty perfect. All right, last question. Anything else that we need to know about White Bluff?
We're still a close community, and we try to keep that going. That's why we have the community reunion every White Bluff Community Union every 2 years. We have it so that we can, you know everybody's family, know their kids, their grandkids, and all that. And then the elderly get to tell some of their stories, and of how, you know, how it was for them when they grew up. And so we still, you know, try to keep everything together as a White Bluff community, and try to stay in the know, you know, with everybody and what's going on, and all that, which is good. Yeah.
It's important.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's it. Thank you so much for sharing your memories with us today.
No problem.
We're really grateful you came out for us.
Yeah, well, thank you. I enjoyed it.
Yeah.